Welcome to Your Property Podcast with me, Ant Lyons, and today we're talking about how to flip property for profit, what to do and what not to do. And I'm joined by a very good friend of mine, Susannah from the Good Property Company. YPN members will be no stranger to you, Susie, but there'll be people listening to this and watching this who may not know much about you. We're talking today about, I guess, some of the rules about flipping property for profit. And let's do a bit of property credibility to start with. So for those people who don't know you, can you give us a potted history of property, what you've been doing, numbers of deals and what they look like?
Okay, nice to be here and thank you. And we were having a pre-podcast. Oh my goodness, property. Don't we love it? Don't we occasionally want to throw it out the window?
Or ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, one or t'other. Very nice to be here and good luck to everybody listening. Really wish you the best. I started, I think, around 18 years ago now, having spent about 18 months not doing anything but reading books. Podcasts didn't exist then. And writing the perfect business plan for 16 pages without ever actually doing anything. But my business plan was perfect, backwards, forwards and sideways. And then I got started and my plan was just to buy property for my family and myself. I didn't have any spare money, so I very quickly had to bring in investors and very quickly had to bring in some cash generating strategies as well as asset owning strategies. Otherwise, I'd have run out of cash flow. And then I found I liked it. So it grew and it grew quite fast. So we sourced, sold, bought, flipped, kept over 200 deals. It was 217 deals in 4.5 years. The value was 45 million, but the purchase price agreed was 30 million. Most of those I did with private investors, either sourcing them on joint venture flipping, which we'll be talking about quite a bit today. And then I built a fairly substantial property portfolio. So I'm based in Bristol, very near to where you are. Almost all my properties are within Bristol in a very tight geographical area. I've got single lets, student HMOs, which used to be professional HMOs, but are now student HMOs. I've been running service accommodation since 2008, but the week before COVID, we moved all of them into single lets and I've actually not moved them back since yet. And then I have one property in Glasgow where my son went to college, but it's near my parents. And just in case ever they might need somebody to give them any care, I just thought we'd probably, if we could offer accommodation, that'd be good. So I've kept it.
Great. So over 200 deals sourced, purchased,
Yes.
Bought, some sold, some kept.
Yes.
And some tough lessons learned along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, many AM sleepless nights.
Yeah, well, property is amazing, but it rarely runs completely smoothly. And as you said, you're in Bristol, just down the road from me. Bristol is a hot property market. Always. Very wealthy area, lots of competition from cash-rich investors and people buying second properties, people taking on kind of projects on a part-time basis. Not easy to go out and buy from motivated sellers at a massive discount, I would imagine.
It's a numbers game. And because people were saying to me, you can't buy any discounted deals in Bristol, that is one of my buttons, kind of let's see. And so we bought from 4 different routes, but primarily 2. So the 4 routes for buying discounted, which is one of the 3 ways you might want to flip. So the classic buy discounted is from estate agents, from auctions, direct to vendor, direct to house. Now, I was spending about $4,000 a month on advertising direct to vendor, direct to house. And, I am from Scotland, so I stopped that after the first year and thought, blimey, that's 50 grand. I'm not doing that again. And so we really focused. And also I found myself to be quite a significant social worker. And I found myself driving away from very difficult family situations in floods of tears. And I thought, I just don't want to live like this. So I primarily focused on the free and the smoother ones, estate agents and auctions. And the numbers. To buy discounted, 100 phone calls, 25 viewings, 21 offers for an estate agent. Auctions, if you buy pre, during and post, you'll buy 1 in 4. If you only go to auction, you'll consistently come away emotionally kind of distressed going, oh, they go flying high. But if you buy them out of the auction in advance, which I did all the time, or buy them after everybody else has rejected it, then you'll buy 1 in 4.
Okay, fab. So great place to start, where to actually source deals. And we'll talk about how to negotiate on them and stack them as well. So when you're looking at a flip project, what are you looking to make from that deal? Do you have a kind of target
Yes.
profit margin, or is it a physical number, or a percentage, or what's your aim?
20% markup after all costs. So if I could keep it super simple, let's say, and of course we can't do that anymore, but let's say the whole thing cost 100 grand. So, 80 grand to buy, 15 grand to renovate, and 5 grand for the odds and sods. And that the whole thing costs 100, which these days will times that by 2 or 3 times at least. Then we need to be timesing it by 1.2, i.e. selling it for 120. So if you're buying at 200, you need to sell at 240. If you're buying at 300, you need to sell for 360. When I say buying, I mean full cost for buying and all costs.
Yeah. So and factoring in those costs that a lot of people kind of forget as well. The kind of
Yes.
holding cost, the finance cost, if you're staging a property, the cost of doing that, the
Yes.
estate agent's fees to sell it, the solicitor's fees to both buy it and sell it, and those can
Yes.
add up quite significantly.
Yeah. My uncle John, who's not with us anymore, but he used to call it the crud and corruption costs. And there are 8 different types of crud and corruption costs. But staging costs, I used to get round because I would use the same furniture in 5 properties and then pop it into an HMO in the 6th property. So technically, I didn't actually attribute the cost to the flip. I borrowed it for 5 and then popped it into an HMO. And estate agency costs, I would either negotiate them down to 1%, or we used to do selling ourselves from some of the online portals for 99 quid. So we would do a mix of both depending on whether our availability and quality estate agents in the area.
Okay, great. So aiming to make that 20% margin
Yeah.
over and above all of the costs.
Yes.
Got to factor them all in. Any particular types of property that you're looking for? Are these typically kind of really distressed, kind of, real fixer-uppers, or are they on occasions places which you don't have to really do very much to and just flip on?
I don't want to do completely distressed properties that have grabbed your heart that are basically a bundle of stones and nothing else, because there are 3 types of flipping strategies, and we'll mainly, I guess, focus on the discounted one. But if I can outline those and then go back to the kind of condition of the property that I want to be buying, you've got your discounted flipping strategy. So I'm buying it discounted, I'm bringing it back up to standard, and I'm putting it out to the market. Very simple. That's kind of ego free because you're not beating your chest and doing anything marvelous. You're just putting in, you're cleaning it up. You're might be putting in a new boiler. You definitely want to be avoiding roof and windows if you can help it. And you're painting, maybe new kitchen, but maybe just kitchen worktops and repainting and putting on new handles, recarpeting, 14 mil underlay, make it luxurious, turning it around, out it goes again. So that's your discounted. That is a rinse and repeat scalable. And then just briefly, but then we'll come back to the discounted stock. The forced uplift is a really nice flip. And a couple of examples with that is get outline planning permission for a garden, split title, sell garden. Yes, your house then, instead of being end of terrace or semi-detached, becomes terraced. So you have to be mindful of that and the little value drop you may have. But that's really nice. I mean, I would spend like £1.5 and get 70 grand. Thank you very much. But and then the third one is bespoke, which is to die for, things that no one else can get. So the house itself has got gorgeous curb appeal, and then you're putting inside beautiful things that can only be gotten once. So I'm in my house in Bristol right now. I got a 1949 Aga from 87 to 85 years ago or something. I got 1930s French enamel stoves. That's bespoke, isn't it? But that catches a certain type of client, gives you a lot of extra money, but you could miss that client, so that's quite risky. So if we come back, I like for scalability, you're discounted, improve it, sell it. And for that, I want you to be in and out within, the fastest I've been in and out is 4 days. In and out within between 1 week and 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks in terms of renovations. I'm starting to frown at 10 and 12 weeks as the absolute maximum turnaround time I want you to be doing. And you're hustling the whole way through on that turnaround. So what that means is you're not doing huge renovations. You're bringing it back up to standard. So you're not necessarily buying it because the property itself is dilapidated. You're buying it because of the vendor's situation. They want a fast sale. They want a sure sale rather than they want the top sale.
Okay, so that's a great place to start, actually. I'm really honest in terms of buying at a discount or buying a very keen price at the moment. We said that Bristol's a very competitive market. It absolutely is. So you said it's just the numbers game, viewing enough properties. What happens? Do you think people give up too early? They offer on 2 or 3 properties. Those offers are rejected outright, and then they're licking their wounds and giving up at that point. Is that the common kind of stopping point?
Yes. Yes. And I see it, we've been teaching a long time as well. So I see it with, I think I've probably taught about 6,000 plus students so far. So I've got enough data to see who's successful and who's not successful and what are the behavioral traits. And it is exactly that. Oh, this doesn't work. And you just get, my first question is always, what's your numbers? And it's always that they haven't done enough phone calls, viewings and offers. So what they may have done, and listen, we all do it, don't we? We procrastinate, I procrastinated this morning, I've had 3 cups of tea already. But it could be that the person's looking on Rightmove a lot and that feels like work, but that's not actually closing any loops. That's not actually pushing something forward. So yes, it's typically not doing enough phone calls, viewings and offers, and then believing the estate agents, because you are looking for 1% of deals. So the truth is that 99% of deals won't work. So it's completely true what the estate agents tell you, which is you won't find any deals because they don't notice the 1% because they're selling the 99%. So in their world, that's the truth. And you just have to remember, I'm only looking for 1 in 100. So I've got to do quite a bit of searching to get the 1 in 100. And I think people just forget the numbers and then absorb the sort of lesson emotionally from an estate agent. Oh no, you're being a bit daft. You're never going to find a deal. But it's just not true. In any part of the country, it's 1 in 100.
And so I think this happens quite a lot. People get kind of emotionally attached to a particular property as well.
Yes.
So they, there's a property, it's down the road or it's in an area that it looks great, ideal for, flipping, doing up and flipping.
Yes.
And kind of get emotionally involved and attached to that property. And then when the offer is rejected outright, it's tempting to stop at that point.
It is.
So these numbers, so let's talk about the numbers. So if someone was coming to you now and saying, do you know what, I want to do my first flip.
Great.
Yeah, what do I need to do? How many people do I need to speak to? How many properties do I need to view and offer on to get my first deal?
Yeah. So I would say set yourself up for success. Get a population density in your search area of 250,000. There are 49 cities in the UK that will give that. But if you're in a town, pull together 2 or 3 towns. And when I was listening to you summarising, I was thinking, so I live in the centre of Bristol. I was thinking, I've got no limit to where I would buy in Bristol. The entire city is where I would buy, unless the street was awful. So first, set yourself up for success, 250,000 population, and make sure there are at least 100 estate agent offices. So what we're doing there is we're making sure there's fluidity in the market. So there's enough of a population buying and selling, because on average they buy and sell every 7 years. So people will be buying and selling. So there's enough deals being out there. And then are there enough transactions happening such that 100 branches, they could be 20 of the same brand, it doesn't matter, but 100 branches can earn a living employing between 1 and 10 estate agents, depending on how big or small the branch is. And if so, then you've got enough of a marketplace of buyers and sellers. So in Bristol, I think there's about 4,000 houses or something like that a year being sold, So even at our height, we were doing 50 houses. We were a tiny percentage of the 4,000. So 250,000 population, at least 100 branches of estate agents for fluidity. And then your week needs to be, you'll make 100 phone calls. I don't ever go on Rightmove unless I just fancy looking at big fancy houses for fun. I never look for a deal on Rightmove ever. I'm always in at the phone because then I'm jumping ahead of anybody that's using digital. And these days everybody does. 25 viewings, 4 of them will be rubbish. You go to the street and be like, ugh, I'm never going to do a flip here. This is awful. So there'll be 4 that you think I can't offer on it at all. And you only go out to a viewing if you have already got a strong indication it will be accepting a deal, an offer that's discounted. You don't go and see a property because the estate agent's telling you it's a nice property. You only go and see it if you've gone, well, look, I think it should sell for 300 and you already got it on the market for 270, 260. Do you think they'll go any lower? I would need to be offering a little bit lower. Is it worth my time to come out? So you ask the estate agent for advice, but what you're really saying is, I'm going to be offering lower. I don't want to waste your time unless I can come out, So they've got to already be discounted to a degree, not all the way, but to a degree before you actually go and view. And then 25 viewings and then 21 offers. And we had an SOS system, sourcing office system, where every single property we viewed, we put in the information, we put in the asking price, we put in an offer, we put in their response. And then every 30 days we offered, and we didn't stop offering until they went, get lost, we've sold it.
And that doesn't mean sold subject to contract. That means
No.
sold completed.
And even then we might try one more phone call going, are you sure?
I mean, that follow-up process is so important, isn't it? Because I don't know what the stats are now about the number of sales that actually fall over.
1 in 3.
Yeah, it used to be 1 in 4, didn't it? But now 1 in 3, fall over. And particularly in the market that we're in at the moment as well.
Yeah.
It's tough times. So, okay, so when you're making that initial call to an agent, maybe they know you already, maybe they don't. I've seen people go out and go, have you got any deals to an agent? Yeah. And I understand the logic behind doing that. But for me, that kind of indicates I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes.
So present me with something.
Yes.
What's a better way of communicating?
First, I always try and recognise that estate agents lose their jobs if they don't sell houses. They're salespeople on a performance basis, and they won't keep their job. So I have to be not selfish with their time, because if I try and make them my best friend, then they just have to stay late to go and sell some more houses because I've used up too much of their time. And I think a lot of people try and befriend estate agents. I got to know them and then liked the ones I liked afterwards. So I would try and always think that my job is to deliver to you, the estate agent, and my job is to be a committed buyer and not mess around and never drop out of a deal ever and get it over the line. So my job is to deliver to the estate agent, and often estate agents get a bit, their egos get put out because a property developer comes in with their nice loafers and their big chest and goes, "Oh, I'm the big I am," and you think, well, actually, everybody they deal with has got money because by the very nature they're buying houses. So I always sort of presented myself as a beta, not an alpha, in a way, and sort of almost like their administrator, sort of more like their secretary almost, reverse sexism, I guess. And so what I would say is, I'm in this commercially, I'm in this as a business. My name's Susannah. Very nice to meet you. I've done some already. I'd tone it down. I wouldn't amp it up. And what I'm looking for is something that has some margin in it. You may have somebody that is really needing to sell, or it's a bit dilapidated, or very sadly it's a deceased. So I'm giving them examples. Maybe very sadly it's a deceased estate and the family doesn't live close and they don't want it on the market long because it's empty. So even to the estate agent, I'm saying I can solve problems, and I'm giving them 2 or 3 examples of the type of problems I could sell. The first one they give me, they're basically like, get off the phone, don't know who you are. I've got my developer list, I've got my favourite 5, I ain't selling to you, mate. So I just keep them on the phone a little bit. And then when they present the first one to me, it's almost always not a deal. And so I'll have a calculator, scraps of paper, like I'm talking to you right now. I've got 7 bits of paper full of notes, and I'll just go, High Street. Okay. What is it? 3 beds, all doubles. Okay. Got you. What do you think it would sell for? And I'm looking up on Rightmove solds or Zoopla solds straight away, and I'm saying, oh, number 2 sold for that. Why is this one different? But not accusatory, but more as a partnership. more as I'm inquisitive, you're bigger than me, you're the alpha, I'm the beta, I'm learning from you. So I don't try and knock their egos out of place, because estate agents that are good do have good egos, so good on them. And so I'll say, oh, I don't want to waste your time, that one won't work for me, and I don't want to come and see anything that I can't offer on, because it will waste your time, and I don't want to waste your time. And so then they'll another one, and maybe the third one they present to me is a good deal, and I'd be like, brilliant, okay, it's 11 o'clock, do you think we could, I can jump straight out whenever's good for you, and I'll try and get out there within the hour.
So how do we avoid our business card, if those things exist anymore, from going in that filing cabinet under the desk, the round one, chucking it in the bin? How do we avoid being just another investor who's coming in to say, I'll buy all of your properties?
Yes.
We've seen that happen.
Yeah, and they sort of laugh at that. Once you kind of are a wee bit more in with them, they're like, oh, do you know so-and-so? He's such a blonker, because he's come in all... And to be fair to the investor, he's probably come in off a course, super excited, and full of energy, and it's landed maybe a bit wrong. You can't avoid your business card getting thrown in the bin at the beginning, because they don't know who you are. They don't know whether you're steady. They don't know whether you're consistent. But I found... or we as a team phoned every single week to every single estate agent. And the lesson was, when I did Castle Road, which was, actually I still own it as an HMO, fully funded by Anthony, an investor who I think actually, smashing guy. And I was phoning, and David, the estate agent, now you notice I know their names. I still know his full name, David Banford. David, the estate agent, this is like 18 years ago, said, oh, Suze, mate, you have literally just missed one by half an hour. And I was like, no, David, I'm gutted. And he was like, I'm so sorry, mate. And then he phoned me back the next day saying, the buyer's dropped out. Do you want it? Yes, I'm coming immediately. So that taught me, if I'd only phoned the bloke 35 minutes earlier, I'd have got it, not the other guy. As it was, I did end up getting it, but only because they dropped out. So it was nothing to do with those guys liking me. The estate agency was run by two guys called David and David. So it was nothing with the two Davids liking me. The other guy made his phone call before me. So every single week, phone every single estate agency.
Okay. And do you think people stick to that? So when people
No.
come through...
Sorry, interrupted.
How quickly do you think people give up?
Too soon, because it is a marathon, not a sprint in property. Because and people do give up too soon, because they should really stick the 100, 25, 21 on their mirror when they're brushing their hair in the morning, and just get it absorbed into their skin and their bones. People give up too soon, because then you slowly move from the estate agent's got no idea who you are, tons of other people phoning, they're all saying the same stuff more or less, to, all right, David, how you getting on? Hey, Suze, how are you? Have you got anything for me? And then you start to get some phone calls back. So we knew when we were winning, and we were like 22 million quid's worth of deals in, when Ash walked into Hollis Morgan, who's a auction house in Bristol, and the lady who was the secretary, he said, hi. And before she could see him, she said, hey, Ash, how you doing? Now, he phoned me afterwards, and the pair of us were jumping up and down, because that was the moment we knew we were in, because they knew us before they could see us. But that took £22 million worth of deals. Before that, we were just one of many. We were just trying harder.
And so when we're looking at buying kind of out a property that's maybe going into auction, but we're buying it out of the auction.
Yeah.
Either before the auction takes place, or sometimes, afterwards if it fails to sell. Let's talk about the ones that we're buying before it gets to the auction. That can be a tricky one, because people want to hold out and say, hey, let's see what this thing achieves at auction. So how can we take that out of the auction room and demonstrate, yep, you should sell it to me instead?
I'm smiling a lot because this is my favorite way of doing it. My absolute favorite. So I don't like spending money until you have to. So if you were buying at auction, I'd absolutely want you to be paying your lawyer to do your legal pack. So even if you don't get it, you've still spent some legal money. Whereas pre-auction, you don't need to get your lawyer to do the legal pack until you've got it under offer, which is what I love. So what I tend to find is the auction house tends to try and dissuade you from putting an offer in, because they want to sell it at auction. They want the excitement. That's what they're set up to do. So, but by law, they have to present an offer to the seller by law. So they will try and dissuade you. They absolutely will. Ignore it. The only reason you can't buy a property pre-auction is if it's a charity or if it's local authority, and that's because they need to be, because of the Charity Commission rules and because of local authority rules, they have to be seen to be going to an open bidding process. So there's nothing dodgy going on. Everybody else, offer and ignore what the auction house are telling you, like, oh, they don't want to sell before. And you say, completely understand that. And I absolutely wish them the very best. Here's my offer. And here's my offer in writing. As you can see, I've CC'd in their lawyer as well. Obviously, up front, sweet, bring them a cup of tea, but yeah, no, just offer. And the reason is, and the estate agent will push back, the auction house will push back. Of course they will, because they want an auction to be exciting and dynamic and full. Right? But the closer it gets to the auction, they can see how many people have downloaded auction packs. And if very few people have downloaded auction packs and they can see who's downloaded the auction packs, they then at that point turn around to their seller and say, listen, in comparison to the other properties, yours is a very unloved property. We'd strongly suggest you consider the fact that she's offered 3 times now and phoned us 4 times to find out what's going on. And so what you'll tend to find is it's a last minute itis race to get it exchanged before the auction. I mean, I don't think I've ever not exchanged on a pre-auction before the day of auction because they hold out. But if you're consistent, now they don't like to accept offers if you've not seen the property. They're not interested. And I can understand that. So you've got to go see the property, but go see the property in the very first opening slot.
And I also wanted to ask about this feeling of embarrassment that we have sometimes when we put an offer in and it is significantly below what the asking price might be. And that can feel really awkward because we're saying, yeah, you've listed it at 250,000 or whatever the number might be. And actually my offer's 180 maybe, or whatever it might be. Are we right to feel embarrassed by that? Or should we just feel confident in our numbers and say, I'm actually disregarding what it's listed for because I know what this thing is really worth?
So I didn't really do that, which is interesting, isn't it? I know a lot of people do, 250 down to 180, boom, here's my auction, here's my offer. I worked more in, if we go back to stages, more in what you might almost term in partnership with the estate agent. So first, I wouldn't go and see it unless it was lower, if I could get it lower than its value. And second, I would always be clear with the estate agent, look, I do have to offer commercially. I only want to go and see it. And if I can get it within this sort of range, I wasn't negotiating yet, but I was. And I don't want to waste your time if not. So what's the vendor's situation? Always the vendor's situation. I had a 3-page document I filled out on the call to every estate agent. And page number 1 was what's the vendor's situation. And then when I went to the property, I'd spend the first 10 minutes teaching the estate agent how I do business. So I wouldn't be like, now let me show you how I do business. But I was like, do you know that you can buy properties discounted? And because they're young and they're hungry, and I'd be like, let me show you one I did. And I'd have some paper with me and I'd write it up on the wall. And so before I even seen the property, the estate agent understands the process of the business. There is an estate agent called Mike who now owns 10 houses. And he phoned me and he went, Suze, that was because of you, mate, because you told me that when I was a young lad. Good for you, Mike. Good for you. So I would then instruct them in a very gentle way, which also said, you could do this too. This is how I offer and this is why it works this way. So by the time I'm offering, they're almost like a shoulder to shoulder partner rather than,
Rather than competing and trying to badger them down and put them in an awkward position where they're putting forward an offer which they'll be embarrassed about and feel awkward about.
Yes, I wouldn't go and see a property if I couldn't get it discounted. So I eliminated those to save time. So it was an awful lot of work on the phone. And that's the bit I think where people do give up on because they just want to go, kick the tires and see the property. Whereas I then enlisted the estate agent in, this is how it works. And you could do this too. And this is why I'm going to be putting this kind of offer in. And also I wouldn't ever really get into a slagging the property off situation. Oh, it's rubbish, well, why do you want it then? I would just say, this is why we've got to offer at this level. What do you think your vendor would consider? There were occasional properties that I bought at purchase price because they're already being sold discounted. Yeah, fine. If it's worth 300 and you've already got it on offer at 220 and there's 20 grand of renovation to be done, I'll take it immediately, you know. Whereas auctions, they're usually within a kind of 10% of the, you know, the guide price and the price that they're going to sell it with. So really you're going to offer just slightly over the guide price, and then you're going to stick and stick and stick and stick and gently badger without badgering, but gently badger without badgering. Yeah.
Okay. From people who are out there who are trying to do flips at the moment, or maybe they've done one or two and it's not gone according to plan. Let's talk about the common mistakes that people
Yes.
make. And I was actually chatting to someone earlier on this week. He said, I had this property and it's in the current market, and I've done quite a few flips myself already, but this is a tricky market at the moment. I've had the sale fall through 3 times.
Wow.
So, and he said, if I'm lucky, I'm going to come out of this one with a few grand, but certainly don't win every single one. So, are there common traits that people, or common mistakes that people make when they try to get into flipping property and come undone?
Yes. Yes, there are. And I also need to say that out of all the flips we did, 1 in 5 sold for less than we anticipated. And we're quite careful. You know, we do 45 pieces of research to try and assess value. So that would happen to us too. Okay, mistakes. Number one, not having exit strategies and not having a flexibility. So when I go into a flip, if I go into the first strategy, which is discounted, fast in, fast out, very vanilla, very plain, I'll know that I'll put it on the market for 4 weeks at a certain price, 2 weeks at the next price, 2 weeks at the next price. Then it's going to be turned out into some kind of a renter. So I know that it is only ever going to be in the market for 8 weeks, unless there's something very significant that tells me I should keep it on the market. So it's only ever going to be empty for the length of the refurb plus the length of 8 weeks. And then money's going to come into it because it's just going to. So that fluidity of exit strategy is really important. So single let, multi-let, service accommodation, long-term supported living, know how you're going to turn it out if you don't turn it out to a flip.
Okay, so
Number one.
multiple exit strategies on
Yes.
on there. So, because the last thing we want is a property that's on the market for 9 months.
Oh,
It's become really stale, and the agent is immediately saying, "Well, actually, what we need here is a massive price reduction."
yes. Yes. Number two, do all your valuations carefully and don't fool yourself. So 20 solds, 20 on the market, 5 estate agent opinions, then drop it by 5 or 10 grand. Then if you can still sell it for the average of that minus 5 or 10 grand, then go. Great. So make sure that you're in charge of deciding how much you think it's valuable to flip for, not the estate agents, although they'll be part of your assessment. Number three is don't have cost overruns on refurbs. We've all been there, but ideally not. So define what the renovation is going to be down to exactly where every single socket goes. And then also don't overspend. I see early flippers overspending because they fall in love. And I did it as well, by the way. My cream paint on my early properties was Farrow and Ball. I mean, my painters were just laughing at me, 4 times the price. What an idiot. So on a flipper, on a very quick in out flipper, if there's a kitchen there and the inner cupboards, the units are useful. You don't want to have them taking up skip space, having a chippy, having to put in a new kitchen. You just want to change the doors, change the knobs, change the worktop. On a bathroom, you don't want to have to pay a plumber in and out. If it's white, then maybe you change the taps and dress up a slightly yucky looking sink with a towel draped over it, as long as it's white and clean, make fancy so it's small touches rather than big, everything. And you definitely really don't want to be doing windows. You don't want to be doing roofs. You don't really want to be doing changing the heating, because you're on a fast in, fast out flip. You're looking at making it nice, but not going into this, because nobody's going to go in and go, oh, I love the new roof. I'm going to pay you 15 grand more. No, they're like, okay. In 20 years,
It's got a roof, yeah.
yes. So you've added no value at all in the perception. Second things, people don't really understand who their customer is going to be. Identify who you think your customer is going to be. Can I tell you a mistake? I had a beautiful house in High Street. There are loads of high streets in Bristol. Beautiful house, beautiful family house, beautiful garden. I was like, this is a family house. Woo! Forgot to notice that it was on double yellow lines. So when he or she, the parents, got 2 or 3 kids, all under the age of 10, plus all the shopping, They got to walk 250 meters to put it into their house. What an idiot I was. Forgot that families need to bring shopping into houses and double yellow lines don't help. Didn't think about my customer.
And do you have a preferred end customer that you're selling to? So
Yes.
if you want to get kind of speed and certainty in terms of selling on, you probably don't want to be in a massive chain because anything can happen. So who would you, if you had an perfect end buyer, what would they look like?
Downsizers. They've bought and sold multiple houses. They've usually, because they're quite measured, they've probably sold their family home and they may have temporarily moved into rented. They know exactly what they want. Extra cupboard space has to, you need a pantry, you need a cupboard for the Hoover, you need more cupboards because they know how to live in a house. And usually they're coming with a whacking great big of cash because they've sold a bigger house to move into yours. And often they're going into flats, but nice flats, with
Yeah.
gardens.
Apartments, let's call them.
Apartments,
Yeah.
yes.
So yeah. So, and in that instance, someone comes along and said, "Yeah, I want to buy this. I'm downsizing. I've just put my house on the market, my big family home. I want to offer on this. Are you accepting that offer, or are you saying, I'm afraid you're not proceedable? We'll happily sit there with your offer in the background, but this property's carrying on being marketed."
Absolutely. I mean, it all depends on the market because the rising flat and dropping markets, but the viability of your buyer is beyond important. So I obviously like it when they get into a competition with each other. Of course I do, when I've got 3 or 5 or 6 offers and then and I do quite like selling houses direct to the public. And the reason for that is you get a little bit closer to your buyer, because then you've got the opportunity as the technical agent to then ask them, are you happy if I phone your broker? You happy if I phone your... And so then I basically say, look, you need to put your best and final, and you need to give evidence of your solicitor, evidence of your current position, evidence of your money, evidence of your mortgage or your decision in principle, and evidence of your broker. And I'll phone all of those people up before I accept the offer. And then I'll say, and this is the date you're going to buy this house. And I will conveyance my buyers as much as I would be conveyancing if I was buying from them.
Okay, so we're not just sitting back and waiting for this thing to happen,
No.
because selling property can take forever, and
Yes.
solicitors can easily put you down to the bottom of their priority list if you let that happen. So you're steering the sale a lot more in terms of saying, these are our target dates, this is what we're going to be hitting.
Yes. And therefore, and this actually comes from my experience as running a deal sourcing business. So the terms and conditions we had when on a deal sourcing business were within 48 hours, you're going to appoint, if you need funding, you're going to apply for your funding. Within 48 hours, you're going to pay for your survey. No, within 48 hours, you're going to put across your £500 initial fee to your solicitor for, all the odds and sods they need to do. And within 5 days, you're going to have applied for a survey. And that is, we learned to do that as the deal packaging business. And I apply that to my buyers from my properties. And so 11 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be phoning. Now, if I'm selling direct, I'll be phoning them directly. Hey, just double checking, how are you getting on? Did you put your £500 across to your lawyer? Hey, just phoning, how are you getting on? Did you get your mortgage application in with your broker? And if they've given me permission to talk to their broker, and I tend to ask them to give me permission in writing. Hey, just checking, did so-and-so get their mortgage application? Is there anything they're missing? Okay, so, and then I'll phone them back at 2 o'clock. By the way, your broker said you just need to do this. Thank you so much. Now, you notice my tone of voice. I'm not being aggressive, but I'm being your secretary. But I ain't letting go.
Okay, great advice. And in terms of the lessons that you've learned when you're flipping properties on as well, some sales fall over. We know that.
Yes.
What can we do to mitigate that?
And when they fall over, they either fall over within the first couple of days, they just change their minds. You think, oh, thank goodness, like a week of pain, but that's it. Or the more painful is they fall over at point of exchange, where you have dragged along for 10 weeks, kind of going, and that is just so painful. And that one, when I look back on why did they fall over at that point, I hadn't done enough ensuring that their circumstances were in line. Basically, they'd done all the paperwork, etc., etc., etc. And that's where People listening might think, Suze, you're a bit over the top, kiddo. And I understand that, but that's where I've had 10 weeks of waiting for a sale and then somebody just disappears and you think, but you didn't actually get your funding in place in the first place. You were just stringing me along. So that's why I'm much more kind of, I need to see evidence now. So I think it is just gently requiring evidence and saying this is a professional transaction. And as a professional transaction, because you do need to get funding, I need to know when your survey's happening. I need to know you've applied for it. I need to know what your mortgage company's not saying to you, but the broad gist of where you're at is. And also, is there anything I need to supply that will help you with the funding? Do they need any certificates that I can give you that will help you ensure? Are there any conditions to your mortgage that I need to help you satisfy? So tell me what your conditions are if you're happy to, meaning you need to, so that I can give you whatever documentation to tick them off.
And a lot of people come into flipping as well and think, well, do you know what? This is going to be really hard in my area. No, I don't think this is going to work in my area. So I'll head somewhere else. I'll head,
No.
150 miles from where I live or more,
Yes.
300 miles from where I'm actually based. And maybe I know nothing about property up there. Do you believe that it is possible in any market? So we've got people watching this, listening to this, who might be in the southeast, in London, very expensive areas. Do you believe it's possible in every area?
Know your market. If you have people moving houses in your local area, then people are buying and selling property. So yes, I believe it's possible, but then get really specific. So in every town and city, there are streets that are clearly renter streets. They're often more the main roads, aren't they, where there's a little bit more traffic. And over time, those houses have slowly become landlorded houses and tenants live in them. And then there are streets that are owner-occupier streets. So, and know which side of the street is more favoured. Because there's that subtle feeling, isn't there, sometimes in a local area. So you've got to really get granular and know why somebody would want to live in this section of this street, which worries me when you're doing it 200 miles away. Also, what worries me when you're doing it 200 miles away, you've got to turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and go, morning, lads. And like, oh yeah, so-and-so's not here. Okay, and then you've got to turn up just as they're finishing. See you later, lads. Anything you need for tomorrow? No, you're just turning up seeing who's on site.
This is actually probably a really good point to talk about how to make sure that the refurb element goes well. So what are the tips and tricks to making sure that goes smoothly, and where are the mistakes that we make when we're refurbing a property to present it onto the market for sale?
Yes. Main mistake that newer people make is, could you just? And they don't realize, they genuinely think it's a bit like moving a table. And I've seen it. I've seen it when we sold source deals onto people, then they ran their own flip. Could you just knock a hole in this wall? And then they get really upset when there's £500 extra bill. Well, what did you think? So the could you just a way of renovating a property just doesn't work. What you really want is two things. You want a written contract. Minor works is a really good one, with agreed milestones and agreed payment dates. So it's really clear to you and really clear to the builder when they get paid and what needs to be done for that payment. So there's no dispute. And that would include making sure all your building reg certificates, if you do have to do windows, your fences certificates are delivered. I do not pay on certain things until the certificate's delivered. I have had slightly tricky moments where the person has finally gotten the certificate, walked in and sat beside me and my bookkeeper in the office and showed the certificate and then handed it over after payment. Now, obviously that wasn't a really fun relationship because they were trying to resist doing the paperwork, but it was like, mate, I ain't paying you until the proper certificate's coming in. That's what we agreed. So you want something written, you want to write down your own spec of what's needed, and you want to identify everything: floors, walls, ceilings. So I've got two specs I use. I use my own, and then I also use one that I worked with an architect on, where they're literally looking at the 360 internal and external of the property. But then you also want to translate it physically. Now, not every builder, but most builders are physical people. That's why they work in a physical environment. So you want to go round that property with the builder and a pencil and go, right, sockets are here, cross, cross. We call them lamps in Bristol, but light bulbs are here, cross, cross. And the two of you spend a third of a morning walking around the entire site, identifying where everything should be. And often at that point, your builder goes, do you realise? And you go, oh, didn't notice that, So you have it in writing, but you also have it physical with things written on the wall. So there's no problem and no cause for misunderstanding. And then you've got to be on site really regularly.
And do people get it wrong in terms of estimating what this thing's going to cost to do?
Yes.
And how can we get closer to an understanding of, yeah, it's going to be 20 grand or 30 grand, because actually that 10 grand difference makes a massive amount of difference in your end profit margin.
I think there are two ways you can get it wrong. One is you ask the estate agent. Now, the estate agent sells houses. They're not a developer. So they genuinely don't know. And estate agents are salespeople. So they're often very enthusiastic, and enthusiastic people are enthusiastic. Yeah, it'll be 10 grand, 25 grand later, So they just don't know. And you're asking the wrong person. And then the other way people can get it wrong is there are two types of builders, aren't there? There's your established builders. They got 3 to 6 month wait lists. Good on them. They got steady Eddie crew. A-listers, they're chucking along quite nicely, very happy, going to go along till the age of 55. Now, they have cream and margin on their business because they've established. Good on them. They are not your builder, because they are retail builders and you are looking for a wholesale builder. So you're looking for the lad. And I've never yet worked with a lady, but, so I'll say lad. The lad that was trained by that established master builder, who's now 50, and he, as an apprentice, he got, hit in the knuckles a couple of times because he did things wrong. So he really learnt good discipline. And he's now grown up a bit, got a girlfriend, bought a house, had a baby, got married, all the usual life landing moments where you go, got to be an adult now. And he started his business, but he hasn't yet got a wait list. So he hasn't got the means to consistently pay his men. And what he wants is a 2-year skeleton from you where you're paying basically wholesale prices, but you're consistent and repeating so that he knows he can pay his men. Then he'll ladle on top of that the profit-making jobs. And then eventually, quite correctly, he'll phase you out because you're too cheap. And hopefully it's done amicably, not, in a big dispute, that you're too cheap, you're too expensive now, because he naturally goes up into established builder 6-month wait list, got the cream. So it's about finding the right builder who's quality but low price. And you need to catch them in their developmental cycle.
Yeah, where they're keen, they want to take the work on board, they need the work, needs to keep the guys busy.
Yes.
But maybe before they get too big.
Yeah. And you're really useful to them, but recognize that you have a life cycle which will finish, and they'll eventually go, bog off, Suze, you're too cheap. And you go, all right, well, congrats on your building,
Okay, brilliant. And so final words of advice for anyone who's looking at flipping. We know it can be a great strategy to bring cash into the business. That cash can be reinvested into a portfolio for longer term wealth, or you could just stick with flipping. That's absolutely fine as well. So final bits of advice so people don't give up.
Yeah, do it. Don't give up. Try and make sure you've got some working capital. Know that your 3M sleepless nights are normal. Remember your 3 strategies: discounted, forced uplift, or bespoke, and take the least risky one in the early one. But flipping is the biggest lump sum cash generator. I have my place in Barcelona, and I bought it from mainly flipping and some deal sourcing. I just bought it cash. Flip, Yeah. So do it. But know that even an experienced person like me, 1 in 5 sold for less than. So always have a plan B. Well, there you go. There's loads of words there, aren't there? Yeah, but do it. Don't give up.
That's a great summary. Thank you. So if you've enjoyed listening to this, then Susie is a regular contributor to Your Property Network, writes in the magazine every month, and we create amazing content together. And so next step would be to follow the links in the description, yourpropertynetwork.co.uk, find out about how to make money from property from Susie, myself, and many of the other contributors. So Susie, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast today. It's massively appreciated. We couldn't do what we do without people like yourself sharing your real life stories of in the trenches in property.
But remember that you're where I started. I used to cut out that blonde lady from Devon, whose name I've forgotten, who had 14 houses that I thought was unachievable. But it was an article years ago, folks, and I just cut it out from YPN and put it where my breakfast cereal was. And I thought, if she can do 14 houses, then maybe I can. So that was one of your articles.
And that was 200 plus deals ago. So yeah.
Yes, it was. And I was like, that's incredible. But she kind of like, she looked a nice woman, but she looked sort of a normal nice lady. So I was like, well, I guess maybe. Yeah.
Hey, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Social proof, ordinary people achieving extraordinary things in property every single day. And you said at the very start, you didn't start out with this with loads of money. You didn't have the kind of silver spoon, massive inheritance, huge pile of money in the bank. Very few people start like that. Very, very few people start like that. And so successful property investing and flipping shouldn't be the preserve of the already wealthy. There are ways to do this, even if you're starting out with, not so much knowledge at the moment and possibly very little capital. So we're here to continually demonstrate that is possible.
So I guess we'd say to everybody, keep cutting out the case studies from YPN, keep sticking them on your kitchen cupboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep listening to the podcast, keep watching these videos, keep reading YPN magazine, keep going onto the membership site, because other people are already doing what you want to achieve.